For more on the president's nuclear arms policy, our guest is Stephen Schwartz. He is the editor of the Nonproliferation Review Journal at the James Martin Center for Nonproliferation Studies at the Monterrey Institute. In his book, Atomic Audit, The Cost and Consequences of U.S. Nuclear Weapons Since 1940, Schwartz documents the comprehensive cost of America's nuclear weapons program. I spoke with him earlier from Chicago. First of all, Steve, welcome to Arise America. Thanks so much for coming on. Would you just give our viewers a general overview of the state of the nuclear arms and nuclear arms facilities in the U.S. today?
Sure. Well, it's substantially smaller than it was during the Cold War, both the number of nuclear weapons we have, the number of delivery systems we have to take those nuclear weapons to their targets, as well as the facilities that are responsible for developing, testing, and manufacturing them. And that, in fact, is part of the problem. The United States didn't do a very good job in investing in the upkeep of our nuclear weapons production complex, which is managed by the Department of Energy, which, notwithstanding its name, spends 2/3 of its budget on our nuclear weapons program. And so the nuclear chickens, in a sense, have kind of come home to roost, in that if we're going to have a nuclear arsenal for any foreseeable time in the future, we're going to have to invest heavily in rebuilding pretty much every facility in the complex.
And that's sort of what bubbled up to the big news today in the New York Times. There's a big article. Centerpiece to this article is a brand new giant facility in Kansas City that's replacing an old one. And the conventional wisdom, as I understand it, is upgrading and modernizing the nuclear program, the facilities, the warheads, will hasten the U.S. toward reducing nuclear arms. Does that ring true to you, and how is that even possible?
Well, that is the argument. It's not a new argument. It's one that people made in the 1980s during the Reagan administration, when they talked about a build down. You would build up a large number of new nuclear weapons and then retire the old ones. And that is actually what some people in the administration and in the military are talking about, that if we can simply build up, develop some newer types of weapons, we can then retire the older ones that they say are less useful or potentially less safe. But frankly, I think the argument should be, if those weapons are no longer useful or safe, perhaps we should just be getting rid of them. And in fact, that's sort of the course that we were on until fairly recently. If you look at the size of the nuclear arsenal, it's come down dramatically in recent years, but now we've kind of plateaued. And notwithstanding President Obama's rhetoric about wanting to seek a world free from nuclear weapons in order to have a world secure from the threat of nuclear war, we're pretty much not moving very far in that direction these days.
Yeah, indeed, there's many of his critics, and they often look for reasons to criticize him. They'll point very much to the fact that President Obama did campaign leading up to the 2008 election on a nuclear-free world, and in fact, shortly after he became president, he received a Nobel Peace Prize because of that. So is this a flip-flop or a waffle on the part of the Obama administration?
I wouldn't call it a flip-flop or a waffle, although obviously President Obama is just one man. He has played a very important role, and I think has said more publicly and probably done more as a president rhetorically than any of his predecessors, at least in recent years, in terms of wanting to move toward a world without nuclear weapons. But what I think we're really seeing now is the conflict between rhetoric and reality. The president is, again, just one man. He has a lot of good people working for him, but he's only one part of the government. And we have a lot of people, unfortunately, in Congress who have a very different perspective. Most of them are Republicans, but not all. And they want to see not only the retention of the nuclear weapons we have, but also the enhancement of those weapons and the development of new weapon systems, new bombers, new submarines, new ballistic missiles, and so forth, that would enable us to hold Russia and China and other countries at risk for decades from now. And that is, unfortunately, President Obama's rhetoric, in a sense, has kind of caught up with him. He made some deals back in 2010 to secure the ratification of the New START agreement, and those deals are now perpetuating the further retention of nuclear weapons, when in fact we probably ought to be moving, at least in the president's words, in the opposite direction.
Steve, I'm almost out of time, but which one of those two factors that you just brought up, particularly politicians who are protecting their constituency, which means jobs in these states where these nuclear facilities exist, or this apparent increased threat from Russia, who has asserted itself in a very aggressive way within the last year?
Well, I think it can be, you can argue that it's both. We obviously have several thousand nuclear weapons in the arsenal today. A significant fraction of them are on alert. They did nothing to stop President Putin from invading Ukraine. They haven't done much to help with against the Islamic State or other terrorist organizations. They did absolutely nothing to help us against 9/11, of course, 13 years ago. So they're really weapons from another age and another time that are not very useful for the threats that we face today. Notwithstanding that, there are certainly many members of Congress and certainly people in the militaries whose careers are built upon these weapons who do not want to see them go away. In the case of the military, it's because their careers depend upon having a nuclear arsenal. And in the case of members of Congress, it's because it brings home the bacon. It allows members of Congress to say that we're bringing home lots of jobs to our state, which would be otherwise job poor, and therefore this nuclear missile base, they would never say this, but even though it may not be relevant strategically today, it's relevant economically to our state. And that's a very difficult argument in these times to counter.
Indeed. We'll have to leave the conversation there for now. Stephen Schwartz, thank you so much. It's good to speak with you.
Thank you.